What is going on, guys? I'm Jack and welcome back to Project Race Car. So I often get asked about modified car insurance specifically, which is obviously the purpose of this video, as you can see from the title. So I have owned various modified cars over the last couple of years, Evos, Fiesta STs, Mazda MX-5, obviously the Skyline. And I do get quite a few questions actually from people saying, how do you go about your modified car insurance? What do you do? How do you get it cheaper, and so on is the main point I want to address today. So obviously, modified car insurance is very easy to get. I don't want to say ripped off because it's not really being ripped off, but it's very easy to overpay for your insurance. So that's why I'm making this video today, and hopefully it will help some of you guys. So I will say from the start, this is not going to be how to cut corners, how to go through loopholes, to get the process cheaper. It's just what I've learned insuring these sorts of cars, and how you can get the price down sensibly, while still maintaining cover. So without further ado, let's crack on and get on to the first point on how I reduce my modified car insurance, or how I have reduced it in the last couple of years. So I've had to put the camera down, guys, because after every 2 videos, my arm is absolutely killing. So hopefully you can still see the car in the background, because that's always exciting, right? So first point is have another car. I know that sounds a bit weird, and it's obviously not going to fit everybody's scenario. But you've got to think about insurance from a risk point of view from the insurer. So obviously the easier you make it for them to prove that you're not going to crash it or be in a situation where somebody will crash into you, chances are your premium's going to get cheaper. So if you have another car, if you have a daily, obviously this isn't my daily, as you can probably guess. If you have a daily and obviously have a normal daily like a Fiesta or a Focus or whatever, or an Audi A3, something normal that is fairly cheap to insure, you can reduce a lot of things on these sorts of cars. So again, I know that's not going to be applicable to everybody, because some people drive modified cars as their daily because they can only afford to run one car. But if that's you, just stick with us for a second, because obviously the rest of the points are going to be related to that as well. So the reason I say that is because if you can reduce the mileage and the commuting and all that sort of stuff on your modified policy, that is going to bring the premium down. So I've got I think 4,000 miles a year on this policy, and that's probably still a bit high, because I probably do 8,000 in my regular car, and I probably do about 2,000 in this car. Well, this year's been a bit of a tricky one because I've done less miles because of COVID and the car's been off the road and so on. But nonetheless, mileage doesn't make a huge difference. However, it does make a difference. But what makes a difference more is if you do not drive these sorts of cars to your place of work. So you'll notice when you are doing your insurance policy, there's several different options for the use of the car. So there's social, domestic and pleasure, and social, domestic and pleasure, and commuting to a place of work, I think it's called. You'll see in the options when you choose it. You can check on Go Compare or Money Supermarket or something like that to see what I'm talking about. If you take out commuting to work, it does make a big difference to your policy, guys. Obviously, it's all going to be relative, but it will make a difference, and obviously bring the mileage down as well, as I said, will make a difference. So that's definitely something you can do. Obviously, if you can't afford to run another car, that's understandable. However, if you can avoid driving it to work, if you can take a bus or you can walk, that's still going to help. So as I said, these things are going to be crossing over to various different situations. So yeah, make sure you follow along. So guys, the next point, and probably one of the most important ones actually, we probably should have started with this, but nonetheless, is the type of insurer that you choose, or the insurer that you choose. So for those of you who don't know, there are specialist modified car insurance brokers. They're normally not insurers themselves, so people like Adrian Flux, Greenlight, Keith Michaels, and so on. I've used all of those in the past. This car is currently with Greenlight. Again, I should point out this video is not sponsored by any insurer or anybody else for that matter. However, I've spoken to Greenlight for this car for the first time. It's the first time I've used them. They were absolutely brilliant. So I can thoroughly recommend Greenlight. Adrian Flux are also brilliant as well. I also have my other car insured with Keith Michaels. There are plenty of insurers around. As I said, they don't actually do the insurance though. It's worth noting that. Not that it really matters to you guys, but it's worth noting that they use other insurance providers. So they will go off and try and find you a quote with another insurance provider to get you the best quote. So they'll basically pit your quote against other people and who can get the cheapest price, and then they'll come back with that, and they take a cut. That's how it works if you didn't know how insurance brokers work. The reason I say that is because the type of company that you choose, they have ways, and obviously the knowledge of brokers and things like that, that are going to get you a better deal on your modified car insurance policy. So yeah, I would thoroughly recommend Greenlight. They've been super helpful with me. The chap that I spoke to on the phone was very knowledgeable about cars, which makes a difference. I didn't really realise. He was talking to me about the build of the Skyline and what parts we had in it, what power we were running, and he was sort of saying things before I mentioned them in terms of modification. So yeah, definitely, you don't have to go with Greenlight, but definitely choose a modified car insurance company to go with your policy, because A, they will cover you better. They will cover the value of the car if it ever gets crashed or written off, or any sort of accident or anything like that. They will also probably look after you better in terms of modified policies than a lot of mainstream lenders. I'm doing mortgage stuff at the moment. A lot of mainstream insurers. So yeah, definitely bear that in mind. So moving on to point number 3. This isn't specifically a way of reducing your premium, however, it's something that I think is worth mentioning nonetheless. So, modifications. Obviously, as you guys know, you need to declare your modifications on your insurance. For me, obviously, there's quite a lot of money in this car in terms of modifications. So, where possible, you want to insure the modifications on a like-for-like basis, and you may hear that term floating around. Like-for-like just means if there's an accident and it smashes up the whole front end of your car, they will provide you with parts of a equal likeness or equal quality to replace as part of the insurance claim. So it's definitely worth doing that. And the reason I also mention it as well is because do not be tempted to miss modifications, especially performance enhancing modifications. So the good thing about companies like Greenlight, as I mentioned in the previous point, and Adrian Flux and all those sorts of people, is more often than not they will cover non-performance modifications included in the policy. So you have to declare them still, but they won't increase your premium. That's not always the case, so do check that with your insurer before, obviously just assuming that's the case, but please list all of your modifications. Mainly so if there's ever an accident or the car's written off, they will pay you for them. That's the biggest thing. So even though it doesn't directly reduce your premium, if you do unfortunately have an accident or anything like that, it will ensure that you get paid out correctly. Also going to tack onto this, please value the car properly, and there are a few options in terms of what you can do to value your car in terms of insurance. There's what's called a market value and agreed value. There may be other options, but they're the ones that I've come across. Agreed value is, I'd say, probably the most common. I'm not 100% sure. It's what I've used in the past, which is basically where you get a form, you have to, you value the car, so you say, I think my car is worth 20 grand or whatever. You provide a load of photos, you provide a list of modifications and spec and things like that, stuff about the car, it's all on the form. That then goes off to whoever insurer is, usually a third party. I've used Trinity Lane in the past. And then they will agree or disagree and say, yes, your car is worth X amount. One tip that I found when I did it with my Evo, when I did it with the Skyline actually, they, because I'd only just bought the car for 16 grand or whatever I paid for it, I stuck it on a policy that was already running, which had 6 months left on the policy. I moved the car onto the policy and then it renewed 6 months later. And they would not value the car higher than what I paid for it, despite the fact that it had actually gone up about £4,000. So that's one thing to bear in mind with agreed value, and especially when you're talking about cars like this. It's, you've got to be really careful. This is now insured on a market value policy since I moved it. I moved to Greenlight, as I mentioned. That means it is insured at the value that the market for the car is at the time if you ever have to make a claim. So if these are going for 30 grand, or they can only find, a couple of examples with 25 and 30 grand or whatever, that as close to this spec as possible, that is what they will pay out. So again, check with your insurer before going down that route and make sure that it is insured for the correct value. And anybody like Greenlight or Flux or whoever, they should be able to help you with that, because it's in their interest to get you a good deal and get you the correct deal. So definitely check that. So moving on to the next point. This is probably one of my favourite tips, which I don't think actually a lot of people know about, in terms of how it affects your premium. So you guys may have come across this, but if you've owned a car for a longer period of time, so like if you just buy a car and then you insure it straight away, which is often what happens, right? Your insurance premium for that year will be higher than it will be for the following year, regardless of no claims, because for some reason, I don't know the exact ins and outs of this, that if the longer you own a car, the more it reduces your insurance premium. So one thing that you can do, well, obviously if you need to insure it, you need to insure it. You just have to bite the bullet on that one. But what you can do is, if you're a younger driver, or you want to build up a project or something like that you don't need to insure straight away, buy the car and then just keep it somewhere, store it if you can, if you have the ability to do that. And then when you're ready to insure it, you can say, I've owned the car for 3 years or 4 years or 2 years, however long you've owned it, and it will reduce your premium. So it's worth bearing that in mind. If you're holding onto the money to wait until you can either drive the car or insure it or whatever, buy the car if you've got somewhere to put it, and obviously make sure it's secure. Obviously, because if it's not insured, you need to be careful where you put it, or get off-the-road insurance for it. But yeah, definitely try that out, and obviously bear that in mind as well when it goes, when you're going through your insurance policy as well, to say that you make sure you get that value correct and say that you've owned the car for the correct amount of years. Again, don't be tempted to lie on this, because insurance companies will find any way that they can to not pay out if you have an accident. So I'm very much of the opinion you should keep everything as accurate and correct as possible. So some people will tell you, just fiddle with it and lie. I would rather not do that personally. When you're talking about cars that are worth 25, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand, whatever your car is worth, you've got to be really careful. So definitely do everything by the book where possible. So moving on to point number 5, which is something I'm sure you guys are all familiar with, but I want to address it nonetheless. No claims bonus. So what I specifically want to talk about with no claims bonus is multiple policies and no claims bonus. So as I mentioned in the first point, ideally you want to be in a situation where you've got 2 cars, one that your daily and your modified car. What you want to do is you want to put your modified car on your policy with your highest no claims. So I know that might sound obvious, but I'm sure a lot of people don't do that. So obviously it takes time to build up no claims bonus, and if you're 17, 18, you're not going to have much, so appreciate that. But if you're 25, 30, 40, however old you are, chances are you're going to have a pretty decent no claims bonus. So for example, on this policy I've got 8 years no claims, coming up to 9. So yes, over 5 years it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but nonetheless I've got that amount of no claims on that policy. I then have another policy with my Audi on it that has 2 years no claims. So that's from a previous car that I've built up over the same period. So the longer you have the 2 cars for, the cheaper it's effectively going to be in insurance. This might take some jigging around if you're moving or buying a second car, because obviously you're going to have to move the car onto the no claims policy. It's worth noting that you can move no claims around. So if you've got 8 years no claims on one policy, I think you have to technically cancel that policy and then take out a new policy with the proof of no claims, but you can do it. So you can move the no claims, check with your insurer, you may be able to just transfer them. I don't know, I've never actually done that. I've always cancelled policies and done it that way. But what this means is, it's probably going to be cheaper for you to have, so you've got 5 years no claims as an example. It's going to be cheaper for you to have 5 years no claims on that and reduce the premium by 25%, let's say, and then have zero no claims on your daily, which is only going to be a few £100 to insure anyway. So you gain more money by moving the no claims onto your obviously more expensive policy. That's obviously assuming this is a more expensive policy. There's a lot of variables here, but let's just make some assumptions. So definitely worth doing, and as I said, try and get 2 policies if you can. Yes, it's going to cost you a bit, probably in the first year or two, assuming you don't have an accident, because you'll be paying 0 years no claims on one of the policies. But obviously if you do that on a cheaper policy, it's not so bad. So guys, I've just jumped in the car because it was starting to get pretty chilly outside. Yeah, hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Insurance is such a variable and fickle thing that it's almost impossible to tailor it to everybody. If you guys are 19 or 18 or whatever, it's going to be expensive for you to insure any car, let alone a modified car. So just bear that in mind, and then put this stuff into practice when you get to an age where you've got a couple of years no claims, you're a bit older and all that sort of stuff. Or if you can afford it, just pay the money now. But just bear in mind that it is going to be expensive if you're a younger driver. It took me a long time to be able to afford the insurance. My Evo was my first, Evo 8 was my first sort of modified car. So, and I was paying about £1,000 a month for that at 25. So, it's going to be expensive. These cars are expensive to insure. You've just got to bear that in mind. But yeah, hopefully, as I said, hopefully this was helpful for you guys nonetheless. If there's anything you think I missed or any tips that you want to share, leave them down in the comments below. If you made it this far into the video of me talking the entire time, I really appreciate you staying this far. Please hit the like button if you did enjoy it, if you learned something, if it was helpful. Consider subscribing if you want to see more on or more of these sorts of videos, and also more on the Skyline and Ollie's Evo as always. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. I've been talking pretty much non-stop. So yeah, appreciate you guys staying along, and I will catch you guys in the next one. But for now, see you later. Bye.